We are the one, the light in the dark. One heart, one world, one spark. We are the one, together we rise. One dream, one voice, one sky.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Empowered Across the World. And this is our podcast. And I have amazing host, Minnie, today. I love it. Alina, back from Kenya after 2 weeks. And she's from Poland. I have Raksha, who resides in Miami, and she is a co-facilitator in my global program, YEA Global. And then I have Chinere out of California. And I have Melissa out of Texas, and I have Jackie out of Arizona, and I have Linda out of Fort Lauderdale. And I reside in Florida, and I am global also. So we have a guest today that we're very excited to hear her story. And this is Julie. And Julie, is it Rabboah?
Yes, Rabboah.
Did it. Okay, Julie Rabboah, please come and share your story with us and inspire many.
Well, so my story is not one I ever intended on sharing because childhood trauma is something that most people hide out of fear, out of shame, out of just being afraid that people are going to judge them for the things that have happened to them as children. And so my journey is not one I ever, anticipated sharing, but I'm a Christian mental health and wellness coach, and this is something that God has prompted me to do because there's so many people who need to hear that there is hope of, for whatever they've been through, that they can be healed, that they can be whole, that they can have wonderful relationships. And so I help people become redefined, renewed, and restored through faith and psychology. So my story really began um, when I was young. My parents divorced when I was 2. And it was really because my mom had undiagnosed mental health issues. She had a very serious mental health issue called borderline personality disorder, which wasn't even a diagnosis until 1980. And so there wasn't any help. But it has impacted her in many ways, especially in her relationships, being very chaotic. And so growing up with a mom with mental health issues, um, it affected me in very profound ways. And so, not to shame anyone who has mental health issues, it's not their fault. They don't choose to have it. But at the same time, it really can affect the entire family. And so I grew up with just a very chaotic, unstable household where there was a lot of shame, a lot of judgment, a lot of accusations of things that weren't true, where I wasn't allowed to have an opinion or speak my mind. Especially when it didn't align with my mom felt I should be thinking and doing and feeling. And so I learned to people please, and that was how I survived in the house. And so people pleasing, of course, when you learn that as a survival mechanism, you take it with you into your adulthood, and then it's not healthy. It really impacts your other relationships when you are trying to navigate and you're saying yes to things that you don't want to, and you're saying yes to things that you probably shouldn't. And so you really have to come to a point where you realize this isn't healthy for me. It's not healthy for my relationships because now I'm living inauthentically. And when you're living inauthentically, you cannot be happy. And so I found myself at the age of 21 utterly miserable, crying on the floor of my bedroom as a college student. And I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. And that's when I knew God was real, that He loved me, and that I needed to live for Him, not another human being. And so that was a radical shift in my life where I began to become healed from the inside out. And, it radically changed my life because when I was 21, I didn't want to get married. because my mom had taught me that men weren't safe. I shouldn't be married. I shouldn't, you know, the whole gamut. And then I met someone and I thought, God, I don't want to get married. I'm so afraid. But
Mm.
he actually sent me somebody who was a psychology undergraduate. And that's when I actually began to realize through him that my mom had an undiagnosed mental illness, which was later diagnosed by a professional. And he began to say things like, Julie, you need to start using boundaries. And I thought, well, what are boundaries? Because they really didn't exist in my home. And so he really began to teach me some healthier skills. And then we did eventually get married. And I didn't even want children because I didn't want to repeat that toxic cycle that I had grown up with. And I didn't want to be a hurtful mother the way that my own had been. However, that began to shift too as I began to grow in my faith and began to trust my now husband. And so now I have two adult children. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. I initially began my career in elementary education, but I recently went back to school and got my master's degree in mental health and wellness with an emphasis in Christian ministry so that I can begin to coach and lead and help others. And so I am currently a Christian mental health and wellness coach, and I am writing a book so that I can help others. And I'm speaking. So I've done some church events and podcasting and whatnot because people need to know that, God doesn't want the abuse. He wants people to lead healthy lives where they're not hurting others. And when people are hurt and impacted, he wants to come alongside them and heal them from the inside out because he doesn't want to leave us broken. He wants to leave us whole so that we are renewed and redeemed and restored.
Mm.
So that's where I'm at.
Wow. Wow. So great. One of the things that I love about this podcast is the guests that have come on have taken something that's been really instrumental in what they've learned for themselves and made it something that's can make a difference for so many other people, and that's what you've done. And thank you for seeing that that is a need and that is something that can really and truly impact so many people out there. So okay, so does anybody have a question for Julie? Raise your hands. I have a question for you. And mine is always kind of the same direction, and that is because I'm all about having young people that are just starting on their journeys. Um, it, and where you can inspire them, and that they don't have to learn the hard way. So my question for you, Julie, is, you know, kind of uh, what kind of wise words of wisdom could you impart to our young people just starting out in their journey in life that have probably experienced some of the things you have experienced? What would you tell them to to be able to mm, be empowered inside of the life they've led?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely advise them to seek help from somebody who is experienced in mental health because a lot of times we seek help, and especially if you've grown up in church, we've got people who are very wise in the Bible, but not understanding mental health can tell us things like what has happened to me. Well, that was your mother. You need to forgive her. Absolutely, we need to forgive, but there's a difference between forgiveness and accountability and
Mm.
saying, you need to take care of your mental health because it's impacting me. And when you choose to treat me this way, I'm going to have to say I'm going to leave now and I'll talk to you, a little bit later. And so we need to have boundaries there. So I think it's really important to see someone who has experience in training in mental health And if you want to see somebody who also has a faith background that can integrate your faith, that's great. See a Christian mental health professional or whatever faith that you are a part of. I think is really important.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Jackie, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
It's so, to me, it's such a miracle to look at this screen because so much a part of what you are is in every woman on this screen. They can relate in commonalities, which is my core of what I see is commonalities at the beginning. There's a spark in every single one of them who are here. All of that said, I suppose my question is, besides the Christianity as a core and the wellness, because the Christianity is such a part of what you're doing, is there a sector of the population that you would prefer to work with more than any other part that we could look at who we know that might be able to bring in your direction?
Well, it's called adverse childhood experiences, and those are people who have grown up with childhood trauma. And so that would be any form of abuse, which would be sexual, physical, or emotional. Two types of neglect, which would be emotional and physical. And then the realm of family dysfunction, which incorporates, children. So anyone under the age of 18 whose parents have been divorced, someone in the household who's been incarcerated, somebody who has a mental illness, a substance abuse issue, and domestic violence in the home. And so that's really the population that I work with, but more specifically, women.
Yeah, makes
Beautiful.
sense.
Okay, Melissa, go ahead.
I am so glad I'm here, Julian, that I met you. I think we have a lot in common. And I find that there's a lot of trauma around money in households too, and that also affects our relationships with our significant others and our children and so on. But I was going to ask you because I love to hear stories about people going through the journey and what they experience. Do you have a particular story from one of your clients that just lights you up or that just really warms your heart?
Well, so I would love to share about clients, but I'm bound by confidentiality, and it being that it's in mental health. And so I mostly share about myself, but I would love to just share that, when my mom and I got divorced, when my mom got divorced, we ended up on welfare. And so there's absolutely financial trauma that happened there. My mom made every single article of clothing that I had until I was 10 years old. I slept in a sleeping bag on a hardwood floor until I was 8. And my grandmother found out I didn't have a bed and she bought me one. And so just that fear around money was really significant. Having an empty refrigerator and all there were in the house was a box of cornflakes and a pitcher of powdered milk and some oranges and, not much food in there. But when we work on our mindset and coming from my framework, Christianity, when we capture every thought and make it obedient to Christ, it's actually like cognitive behavioral therapy. And we can really rewire how we think about money, how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, how we think about God by realigning some things that we have learned and absorbed and picked up from our environment that aren't true. And so that's what I love to do is just really work on those lies that we have believed and absorbed and have adopted and replace them with things that are actually true about ourselves, about what we're capable of, about our worth and our value. So,
Thank you.
Okay, Alina, go ahead.
Yes, Johnny, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. You mentioned that women are the group that you work with. So my question is, what is the biggest problem faced by adult women who experienced trauma as children?
I would say most people wouldn't recognize it, but it is an underlying grief. There is a grief for the relationship you probably should have had with, a parent or who was supposed to love and care and protect you, or an adult who was supposed to love and care and protect you as an innocent, powerless child, but maybe you didn't receive that. There might be grief for missed experiences that you saw other children having that you didn't have, maybe because your mom was working three jobs and didn't have the time and you had to start taking care of your younger siblings. And so there might be experiences that you were lacking or things that you had to do to cope in order to survive. And so there's a lot of underlying grief that exists, not only in those relationships that might still be broken today, but also grieving the losses that you might have had as a child. And so I do work a lot with grief.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely beautiful. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
So I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing, first of all. And oh my God, it's like I think we grew up in the same house.
Mm,
And where I'm at in my recovery from trauma, and mine was a rape at 6 years old. So where I'm at in my recovery, it's I've lived this entire life with this. I'm dealing with my money conversations right now. And that's what I'm having breakthroughs in right now.
mhm,
So I've totally get the whole journey because I've been on that journey. And I haven't, I'll tell you, I've done a lot of work with Landmark Education, and that's where I got to heal from my past.
mm,
And it didn't take me a whole entire life to do it. It was, it's been 20 something years ago. I did something that changed my entire life. And it taught me step by step how to live a life different from the life my mother lived.
mm,
So I'm in that stage in my life where I've retired last year and I can't afford to retire, but I can't afford to work the way I'm working for any longer. And, I have to do something different. So I'm really grateful for the healing and the recovery that I experienced. Okay. And that really I am so, I mean, I'm so, it's really hits my heart that you're doing this for people because, you know, I jotted things down, right? And I know that God's the only way. And I know this. And, you know, um, I grew up with I didn't remember what happened. So it was huge. So everything you're talking about, it just empowers me and I can if I can do anything to help get this message out to other people that need your help. Like there are a lot of us out there, believe me, a lot of us. So I just want to thank you for doing God's work.
Mm.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so
Thank
much. I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for being that vulnerable and sharing with
Mhm,
all of us around your childhood.
mhm.
Thank you. Okay, Raksha, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so all the ladies here pretty much covered everything, right? And I was listening to you and you saying you were a um, elementary teacher, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Yeah.
was, yeah.
So that area is close to my heart because of my grandkids. And it's like, do you do anything work with them to kind of come up and say if something is happening in their circle? Because these days they do so many activities that are on their own and stuff, and we still have the same constraints, right? Because our mental capacity hasn't really evolved that much since we were created. to where somebody says, don't share this with X, Y, and Z, or don't tell anybody about this. How, as a grandparent, can I tell the child that it's okay for you to share anything and everything, right? It's something I keep on enforcing every day with my grandson. So that's why I'm asking you. It's like they don't talk. They really don't like to talk, but you have to be observant in what they're doing when they're playing, what pictures they're drawing and stuff. And not everybody's equipped. I've been blessed to be exposed to these things, but many people are not. So how do you have those hard conversations to constantly build and maintain the trust in your child, in you?
That is a great question because and I don't do any education at this point on that, but it is a great question. And I thank you for asking it because there are so many grandparents and mothers and well, parents who, don't want these same experiences to happen to their own children and grandchildren. And so it depends on the age. I would definitely say how you approach the conversation. The older they get, the more that you can share with them um, explicitly. But, with young children, teach them about the old bathing suit zone, that we were taught when we were young. Just say that these are your private, space in your bathing suit zone. And if anybody tries to ask you to keep a secret, that's not a good idea. And you can share with me. When a child has the safety to know that they will be believed, that's huge because so many people don't want to believe that this person that they've known and trusted for so many years could possibly do that. And so children need to know that they're safe, that they're going to be protected, and they're going to be believed. And so that relationship is essential as a grandparent and a parent. And then the older that they get, the more you can share. Like, if this situation ever happened to you, if somebody said, "Hey, do you want a piece of candy? Do you want to come look at this? Do you want to come rescue my puppy? Um, could you help me in this way?" That adults should not be asking children for help. They need to know that. And then also, if they're ever put in a situation that they should feel safe coming to you. And so I'd say that is really the essential component that their bodies are their own, that they don't have to share them with other people, that adults don't need to be asking them for help, and that certain people are safe, I'd say are the essential components, but definitely gauge that for age appropriateness because they don't have the language. They don't have the language to know that this is sexual abuse or this is physical abuse. They don't have that language yet. They don't understand. And so when they're young, they're powerless. And so adults really do have to be on the watch.
I love that. Wow, Julie, thank you so much for joining us and being a guest on this podcast. Chenere, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes.
We have to complete as soon as you ask your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Julie, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. And the one part I would like to ask you is, dealing with younger people and even people in their adulthood, forgiveness. How are you able to forgive and be so comfortable sharing and then leading people into learning to forgive and be able to forgive their own selves to move on freely?
That's a really tough one because I think you do have to have some component of healing before you're able to forgive. And a lot of times forgiveness can be forced prematurely, like, oh, the Bible says you have to forgive. And yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean right at the outset. There does need to be a measure of healing before we're able to get to that place, in my experience. However, I think the problem also lies in that we equate forgiveness with reconciliation, and they're two separate things. We can forgive And we can say, okay, God, you handle this in the way that you know is best. I don't know what's best. I'm giving up my right for vengeance. I'm going to forgive them and I'm going to lay that situation at the foot of the cross because that's dealing with what happened in the past. Reconciliation is moving forward with that person, and reconciliation requires that that person has accountability and that they're demonstrating the fruit of repentance, which is changed behavior. And so, in order to reconcile, that requires two people, not just the one. And it's focusing on the future of the relationship. And so forgiveness is one piece, but reconciliation is something different. And so just because we forgive doesn't mean it's a safe or a good idea for us to reconcile with people who have been abusive to us or unsafe for our children. And so I hope that that is freeing for somebody who is listening today, that they are two very different things. And hopefully that can help somebody release the burden of bitterness through forgiveness without feeling obligated to reconcile.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Chenray, for asking that question. Really great. Because there are two different components there that you're talking about. I love that. Thank you. So thank you for being an amazing guest on our podcast. And guys, please, we do these on Mondays and Fridays. Please join us again for more episodes of Women Empowered Across the World. And if you want to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out to one of us. We're all over LinkedIn. Just message us and say, I'd love to be a guest here. This is all about women having a voice and having a platform to speak with that voice and empowering others. Many, many women across the world need and want to hear these things, want to hear our stories. So please join us. And guys, we all deserve to thrive. Let's do it together. Let's do it together as women, moving forward together, empowered and speaking. Thank you. Bye, everyone.